Okay, so I brought a couple of my friends with me here today, and I would say out of the entire wedding day, I utilize these four lenses the most of all of my different gear. So we'll go through each one of these, and we'll make sure that you guys understand what comes into play when, depending on the wedding day itself. So first, we'll start from my right, your left, going to the right. So the first lens that I use the most, and I would say 90+% of my shots, or maybe even close to like 80% of my shots, come from a 24 to 70 2.8 lens. Now, 24 to 70 is a zoom lens, which allows you to get wide and close-up shots throughout the day, and you can simply utilize this zoom feature here so that way you can move in and out as you need without having to physically move your body. This lens is very dynamic. It's really great for being able to adapt to any situation that may happen. And then also the 2.8 aperture, which basically is depth of field. How blurry does the background look relative to what's in focus? It gives you a nice, really great blur in your photos. That helps me a lot with making sure I can get creative shots, but then also being able to move in and out as I need. Okay. So that's the 24 to 70. Now I shoot everything with Sony. Sony is a mirrorless line of cameras. I've switched over to that probably about 10 years ago now. I've never looked back. I used to shoot Canon once upon a time, and I just like the flexibility that Sony gives me with the mirrorless lines. It's a lot lighter, especially for a long wedding day. You want to make sure your gear is light and also very agile, so that way you can adapt to the situation. Okay, so that's the 24 to 70 lens. The next one's going to be the 85 millimeter prime 1.8 lens. So the 1.8 is really, really great for portrait shots. I utilize these portrait shots for a lot of my groom photos, for my bride photos. Also utilize it during the ceremony itself, and it's a very light lens. So the fact that it can go down to 1.8 aperture, which is again your depth of field, it also provides you a pretty solid zoom. So 85 millimeter, you're pretty close in terms of being able to compose your photo. And this is one of my highly rated lenses that I utilize. It's a little pricey now. Prime lenses generally run a little bit higher relative to a zoom lens, and that's because there's less glass and the photos come out a lot more crisp and sharp. So 85 millimeter definitely utilize a lot for my portrait shots, and then also ensuring that I utilize them for my ceremonies and also my receptions as well. So definitely a big tool in my tool belt here. My next lens is my 90 millimeter macro. I don't utilize this too much other than in the morning for jewelry shots. I typically will use this for family heirlooms, if I'm getting close up details where I need to physically be close to the bride, but then also if I need to do photos of a ring, an engagement ring, wedding bands, this lens will give me a really great amount of depth of field at 2.8, but then also allow me to get very close and get those really great jewelry shots and getting the actual ring and the diamonds in focus. So 90 millimeter macro, almost a must have because generally for a wedding day, you're capturing a lot of important heirlooms such as wedding bands, engagement rings, and that will help you capture that in great focus as well. Okay, so that's the 90 millimeter macro lens. And then finally is our 70 to 200 2.8 zoom lens. Now, this is again another Sony lens. I utilize this quite a bit. I use this for my couple portrait shoots. So if I'm doing a first look with the bride and groom, if I'm covering a ceremony, or if I'm in a very large reception banquet hall and I can't physically get closer to my subjects, I will generally stand back and utilize this 7200 to get really close up shots, especially during performances as well. Generally during performances, you typically step back and want to get close-up shots of all the performers. This will really allows me to get those shots really crisp detail, really sharp focus, but then also I don't need to be physically in front of my subjects as well. So I can be a little bit further back and I can kind of stand a little more out of the way and then also be able to get the shots that I need. So out of the all the four lenses, this is one of my highly rated lenses as well, specifically during my ceremonies. I use this a lot and during my couple of photo shoots if I'm doing a first look. So that's where this lens comes into play. Okay. So just to recap, we had our 70 to 200, which is our 2.8 lens. We have our 24 to 70 2.8 lens. Again, between the 7200 and 24 to 70, these are both zoom lenses that allow me to move in and out just using the band as opposed to me physically moving my body. But then also, if I need to have more depth of field of 2.8, which allows me to get that blurry look in my pictures, this helps great with that. Okay, and then the other two are going to be our prime lenses. So the 85 millimeter, 1.8, great for portrait shots. We utilize this during receptions, and then also for portraits of brides and our grooms. And then finally our 90 millimeter macro lens, which we use for mainly jewelry shots and makeup shots. So from all the lenses that I use, these are the top four that we use. And then I'm going to show you exactly which of these comes into play during what part of the day as we get into our timeline. Okay, so let's go right in.